Hello, welcome to Oregon News and Interviews with Alan Zundel from Social Advance. Today I'm speaking with Doyle Canning, who is a candidate in the Democratic primary for Oregon's 4th Congressional District. The 4th Congressional District runs through much of the southwestern portion of Oregon, all the way from Corvallis down the mid-Willamette Valley and then out towards the coast. So it's a very big district. And Doyle is here with us, ready to say hello. Hello, Doyle.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh, sure. It's good to see you again. Is your family all well and adjusting to this stay-at-home order?
Yes, I am very grateful that I am well, my family is well, and the kids are happy about being at home more, honestly. Yes.
They're not getting tired of it yet.
Well, they have their moments like we all do, but overall it's going pretty smudely.
And what about your campaign? How's that doing? I mean, adjusting to this whole stay-at-home thing must have been quite an adjustment to make in mid-campaign.
Yes, well, we of course had a lot of events planned that we couldn't have in person. So we're doing everything we can to continue to build our movement and calling voters at home, texting voters, and having events on Zoom like this. And it's going really well so far. You know, we've been doing phone banking for the campaign since October. And in the last month, we've had higher answer rates, longer conversations, and more enthusiasm on the phones than ever before. So it's, you know, overall, I think going really well.
So it sounds like you're in a position to adjust pretty smoothly, and maybe even it has been advantageous in some ways because you get to have those one-on-one conversations with people, which is like what you would be doing on the doorstep for a door-to-door campaign.
That's right. And, you know, I really miss door-to-door canvassing. It's my favorite part of campaigning, is meeting people, connecting with them at their front door, and hearing from them what really is on their minds and what's important right now in politics for them. And so I'm doing that on the phone, and it's very energizing and rewarding to have those conversations. I've been spending a lot of time calling supporters of Senator Sanders, of which there are many thousands here in our district. And I am, you know, asking them how things are going and how they're feeling now that Bernie has suspended his campaign for president. And people are disappointed, of course, but still in the fight, absolutely, and ready to keep this movement moving forward stronger than ever in this race for Congress.
What are the kind of concerns have you been hearing from voters both before and after this coronavirus pandemic started? What's been at the top of the list for them?
Housing is the number one thing we hear about, especially in Eugene, but also in Corvallis, Coos Bay, Roseburg, all over the district. The cost of housing and the crisis of homelessness is prevalent throughout our area. You know, we're the poorest congressional district in Oregon. This is an overwhelmingly working class area of the country. And the cost of housing is really hurting working people. And that's what we hear about most often on the doors. And now on the phones with the coronavirus, people want to know, you know, what's your plan? And people are feeling left behind and an afterthought of Congress. You know, Congress is on an indefinite recess at this point. The speaker indicated on Friday in an interview with Politico that she had no intention to bring Congress back into session in April at all, while we have had absolutely catastrophic job losses in our country, rivaling the Great Depression in the past few weeks. We are in the midst of a crisis that will redefine this country, and we're in the middle of it, and we need leadership. And the people of this district are feeling that and are hungry for that. And so obviously, and so I've been talking to people about what they're going through and what they need. And what people need right now is income. People are very supportive of my platform, which calls for universal basic income for everyone in the country for every month that this crisis continues, so that we aren't forced to go into increasing amounts of debt just to stay in our homes.
And what would you bring to Congress to be able to achieve some of the things you'd like to achieve that Mr. DeFazio, Congressman DeFazio, the current incumbent, has not been able to bring to the table?
Well, my vision is to be a voice for Oregon's 4th District that is responsive to and amplifying the needs we have here. And so my focus is on housing. My focus is on climate change. My focus is on student debt and 100% cancellation. My focus is on advancing the platform that Senator Sanders ran on and continuing to advance that platform in Congress. And there are some sharp points of contrast between my approach and that of the incumbent. One of the most fundamental is who we are. You know, I'm a community organizer. I'm not a career politician. My campaign is built on grassroots support and has hundreds of volunteers and hundreds of donors. And those are everyday people pitching in whatever they can to support this campaign. The incumbent relies on contributions from corporate political action committees. Some of the biggest polluters and even pandemic profiteers in the country today are supporting the incumbent and, you know, betting against me in this race. And there's a reason why. And so that's a sharp contrast. In terms of policy, there are several other important differences. One most defining is on immigration. The incumbent has a pretty consistent history of voting with Republicans to back anti-immigrant legislation, including most recently in 2017, when he voted for a bill that was written by Stephen Miller and backed by the Trump administration. It was one of his campaign promises that is about vilifying and criminalizing undocumented migrants. And DeFazio voted for it. It was opposed by almost every Democrat in Congress, by the ACLU, by every migrant organization. It puts him out of step not only with the progressive wing of the party, but even with the mainstream of the Democratic Party. He's aligned with Republicans more than Democrats on immigration. And that's just frankly disqualifying in a Democratic primary in 2020. I support the migrant justice platform. I have a long history of working in solidarity with migrant rights organizations and labor rights organizations who are organizing in migrant worker communities, like farm workers, domestic workers, day laborers. These are the constituencies that I've spent my life working with and supporting in their struggle for fair wages and for citizenship. And so that's who I am. And that's who I'll be when I serve this district in Congress.
I don't think people, Democrats in CD4 anyway, are used to hearing that DeFazio has not been in sync with their concerns. So are there other areas you'd like to point to that can make that contrast vivid for them?
Sure. I think voters in this district should know that there are only a handful of Democrats in Congress who did not co-sponsor the assault weapons ban of 2019. DeFazio is one of them, along with Henry Cuellar and Sherry Bustos and other kind of standard bearers for the more conservative wing of the Democratic Party. That's where he's aligned on this issue. And the politics of common sense gun legislation have changed since DeFazio was elected in 1986. You know, I'm a mom of a young child who came home from preschool and reenacted a lockdown drill in my living room. This is the present moment. And this is a public health epidemic of gun violence that we're facing in our country. And the mainstream of the Democratic Party supports the assault weapons ban. It's Republicans who don't. And so this is another place where DeFazios is really out of touch. On climate, I think it's important to also point out that the one time, it was in 2009, when there was a climate bill before the House of Representatives, the Waxman-Markey bill, that was championed by now leader of the Green New Deal, Ed Markey in the Senate, who's now in the Senate. DeFazio voted against it. So, this idea that he's a climate champion is also inaccurate. And that's why groups like Climate Hawks Vote, 350 Action, just today, the Rachel's Action Network, the environmental leaders who are working day and night to protect our planet, support my campaign for Congress.
Okay, so let's turn from Democrats to people in CD4 who are not Democrats. And I know the elections haven't been real close, but they're close enough that people worry that somebody that gets a little too far towards the progressive end in the Democratic primary could lose more of those rural voters down south of Eugene, Springfield. How's your messaging resonating with some of the people out in those areas, and how do the people that are maybe more independent or trying to make up their mind between the two parties, how are they, how are you appealing to them?
It's a great question. I think it comes as a surprise to a lot of progressives in Eugene that our campaign has a lot of momentum in Southern Oregon. And that is because we have been out front opposing the Jordan Cove pipeline project since day one. It's one of the reasons why I'm running for Congress, is because we're fighting one of the most egregious fossil fuel projects proposed in our country today, right here in this district. And DeFazio hasn't been on our side, and the people of Southern Oregon know that. His staff has told the activists fighting the pipeline for years, he'll never come out against the pipeline. Well, that changed when he had a primary challenger who was actually picking up his base in Southern Oregon. And, the politics on this again have changed. You can't support a fossil fuel pipeline in your district and call yourself a progressive or call yourself, some kind of climate champion. That's not a thing in 2020. So that's one of the areas where we have a lot of support, is in Coos County, Josephine County, Douglas County, where this pipeline is literally underway. And people have been fighting it for 15 years with no champion in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. So I have supporters down there who are lifelong Democrats. Some are lifelong Republicans. Some are independent. Some have never voted. And they're coming out in this election to support my campaign because I'm fighting Jordan Cove and taking a stand for the rural communities who are most impacted by extractive industry.
I imagine a lot of those voters down south are feeling some economic hardship and have been for a long time. And I also imagine some of those folks have been turned toward Trump 4 years ago because he was giving a different economic message than the ones the Democrats have been stating for a long time. Do you find skepticism in general towards the Bernie Sanders movement and their platform of giving lots of stuff to lots of people? I mean, that's what you usually hear in the media, that people are skeptical that these promises can even be fulfilled. Are they hearing that, or what are you getting?
My experience with voters in Roseburg, for example, is that they're sick and tired of the way that Weyerhaeuser and the big extractive timber companies who are backed by Wall Street are automating jobs, laying people off, and taking all the profits with them, and leaving Roseburg, Douglas County, with a poverty rate among children approaching 50%. This model of economic development is failing rural communities, and people know that. They want change, and they want leadership, and someone who is going to come forward with real solutions. And so when I talk about the potential of Oregon to lead the transition towards the renewable energy future that we need, people get really excited about the vision of developing offshore wind off of Coos Bay instead of LNG. You know, Coos Bay, the coast off of Southern Oregon, has some of the best potential for offshore wind energy in North America. Like, we're sitting on a gold mine here, and there is no political leadership to actually build offshore wind in a way that's going to develop the region for renewable energy jobs that sustain families and sustain our climate. The folks on the ground, the grassroots activists who are trying to bring wind there now, they can't find a firm in the United States who has the expertise and the manufacturing capacity to do it. They're talking to people in Denmark. And that is the state of our country. You know, we've just had a complete vacuum of leadership on renewable energy. And that's got to change, and has tremendous potential to transform our region. Another place where we can really be leading is on regenerative forestry. There's incredible science coming out of the OSU School of Forestry right now, talking about our forests here in the Coast Range, in our Congressional District, being some of the most important for carbon sequestration on the planet, rivaling the Amazon rainforest, Indonesia, the Congo Basin, and the Coast Range. And we need to start treating our forests like they are that kind of green gold, and they're worth more standing than they are clear cut. And we could be leading on regenerative forestry that creates jobs in Southern Oregon that last for generations and cool our climate at the same time. Regenerative agriculture is another place where the Willamette Valley is, you know, at the cutting edge. And we have a lot of support from farmers in the region who are leading the way on how to use agricultural techniques to sequester carbon and grow food at the same time. This is another area where we're leading, and we need a champion on the national level to bring the investment to scale that emerging industry.
Let me give you one more question about the more rural areas of the district. And this is a slight shift from the others. It's not a policy question so much as a campaigning question.
Sure.
What is it like trying to travel across such a large district? This is probably the second largest district in the state, isn't it?
Yes, it would be the second largest. Well, we're not doing it right now because of the stay-at-home order, of course. But for most of last year, we were driving down to Coos Bay to Roseburg, Corvallis, and Lynn County on a regular basis. And it's frankly like beautiful, and has only grown my affection for this place so much to spend a lot of time on the backcountry roads and appreciating the resilience of rural communities and the beauty of this place. And so I really miss that with the social distancing. It's really tough.
So change of direction here. A big part of your message, at least in the past, was over the support for DeFazios on behalf of political action committees and various lobbying groups for big business of different kinds. I was looking through the Federal Election Commission reports that only go up through the end of last year, and I see that you're doing very well for a challenger to an incumbent. Over $100,000 raised just last year. Of course, DeFazios has 10 times that, and a lot of his money is from political action committees, but none of yours is.
That's right.
But I was looking at your campaign contributors, just scanning through it, and I was seeing a lot of people from out of state. So where's that coming from? How are you finding people out of state to support your campaign? I don't mean to say the majority of it is. It seems like I don't even know what the balance is because it's hard to judge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we have a lot of support in the district, and a lot of our fundraising is local, and we were doing house parties every week, several times a week, until we couldn't have parties anymore. And so you're right also that a lot of our support is coming from all over the country. And it's coming from all over the country because people are watching this election and support my candidacy. And these are folks who are part of, in many cases, climate movements and support climate candidates. And that's something that they put their money towards because they know the urgency, they know the stakes of these elections. And when they see that I'm running, they're all in. And so we have a lot of support from people all over the country who care about climate change.
So that's largely from networks interested in climate change issues. And
Mm-hmm.
they see this as a key race for that
Mm-hmm.
because of your past background on promoting climate issues?
Mm-hmm. You know, I've had a profile in the environmental movement for 20 years. So I have a lot of support all over the country from people who I've worked with over 2 decades in environmental movements and in social, economic, racial justice movements as well. And so there's progressives all over the country who are supporting my candidacy because they know me personally or by reputation as someone who they, believe in is a true progressive and fighter for change.
Okay, so you win the primary, and in January 2021, you head to Washington. Either you're going to be serving in Congress while there's a Trump administration, or the way it looks now, at least, a Biden administration. Neither one of them seems especially friendly towards the kind of policies you're promoting. What do you see as the strategy to deal with either one administration or the other to advance these kind of issues?
Mm-hmm. The same strategy I have always pursued, which is building coalitions and movements, grassroots movements of everyday people who are exerting power over the political process. And I will be a partner to the progressive movement working inside of Congress. And that is the strategy to create social change and to have the leverage to actually exact the demands that we need met in order to have a stable climate, in order to have the investments in housing that we need, in order to achieve the fundamental changes like Medicare for all, free public college, student debt cancellation. These things aren't going to happen without a mass movement. And that's what Bernie Sanders' message and campaign was about all along. It's not me, us. It's about building a movement, a social movement in this country that is, pushing for these changes and has champions in power and millions of people in the streets or on the Zoom, as the case may be.
Yeah. So you talked about building a movement, and this brings me back to something you said earlier about talking to Bernie supporters across the district and wanting to give them some hope. I remember there was a Facebook post that your campaign put out a day or two ago about your conversations with those people and things you said to them. So what's the message that they're feeling particularly discouraged right now on the prospects for fundamental change in our political system? How do you keep them motivated?
Well, I echo the messaging that the Sanders campaign has put out around the importance of voting for Bernie in the primary if you believe in this platform. And here in Oregon, that is something that we can do and that I am encouraging because it creates momentum within the party for platform changes that we need to see, particularly around fossil fuels, particularly around Medicare for all and these signature issues of the Sanders campaign. So I encourage people to still vote for Bernie and support Bernie delegates in having that voice in the process of the DNC, and that's still critical to achieving the change that we want to see. And I also say, we need you, and I've had numerous people say to me, well, I was giving money to Bernie every month and I will now give you that contribution every month. And I say, that's great. Thank you so much. And it's just one more month until the election. So yes, we need your contribution, and we need you on the phones, and we need you to be on social media, and we need you to join us on our texting team. And people are excited about that. And so we're bringing in a lot of new activists, some who volunteered on the Bernie campaign, some who never did but wanted to, and we're giving them the opportunity and building our movement stronger than ever.
This is an unusual election year in that all 4 congressional districts in the state that have Democratic incumbents have people on the progressive wing who are challenging those incumbents. Do you have a sense around the country? Are you connected with other people that are closely affiliated with the Sanders movement who are running? Does it seem like it's picked up in other areas as well?
Absolutely. I am endorsed by an organization called Brand New Congress. That was the organization that originally recruited Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to run for Congress, and has now a new class of candidates for 2020. And they're all over the country in all kinds of communities. And it's really inspiring to see this movement going stronger than ever that has been catalyzed by the Sanders campaign and by AOC and her victory. And those campaigns showed all of us what is possible when you build a campaign not on corporate contributions but on the grassroots energy of everyday people in the district. And that's what we're doing here.
So I've started to see a lot of people who are talking about dropping out of the Democratic Party again because they're so frustrated with the Democratic Party and how it seems to have gathered its forces just to stop Bernie Sanders from getting the nomination. Any reflections on staying with the Democratic Party in the hopes that it's going to change versus outside other parties or outside movements or whatever else people might be tempted to turn toward?
I understand the feelings of frustration and even despair that people are feeling right now. And my commitment is to continue to fight and to keep building this movement because the stakes are too high. We can't walk away from this now. Our planet is in deep trouble. And just last week, the scientists in Hawaii who monitor the level of carbon and greenhouse gas pollution in the atmosphere told us again that the rates have gone up since last year. Like, we're still just climbing every year. And we don't have time to wait, and we don't have time to walk away. And so I'm committed to doing everything I can to capture the grassroots momentum of the Democratic presidential primary and transform it into a powerful movement that can continue to push for this change. And on the question of third party, that's something that sounds great in theory. If we had a parliamentary democracy, we don't. We have a 2-party system in this country. And what this movement is about is really asking the Democratic Party to choose. Is this a party that is for working class people, or is it a party that is for billionaires and big corporations? And that's what this movement, that's what Bernie's campaign is all about. And I believe that we need a party, and that the roots of the Democratic Party, the FDR Democrats, are the future of the party. And we need to continue to lead in this space.
So you've been in this kind of a struggle for a long time. You mentioned 20 years, and I have to say, at least today, you're looking a lot younger than you actually are. So maybe this rest at home is helping.
Well, thank you. I'm not
but
getting a whole lot of rest. I'm campaigning all the time, but I appreciate that.
so what I wanted to say was, what led you to this point? What formed your character so that you were so focused on things like social justice, and that you're able to sustain this momentum amid the inevitable setbacks that are going to happen while people try to move forward with an agenda like that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I learned at a very young age that the system can fail us, and that we have to take care of each other. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. Very early in my life, some of my earliest memories are of my mother pleading with the police to help us, and they refused. And it was neighbors in our working class neighborhood in Washington, D.C., who stepped up and supported us and took us in and helped us when we needed help. And so that kind of working class ethic of taking care of each other when the system fails us is something that has kind of shaped my life, I think, in reflecting on this question of how did you become have these kinds of strong values. My mother was also a very strong progressive activist, and dragged me along to protests of apartheid and U.S. intervention in Central America and nuclear power, in the 1980s and early 90s. That was part of my upbringing. So these are values I've held all my life, and it's very much part of who I am. And I've been involved in a lot of struggles, the struggle to stop the Iraq War, for example. We didn't succeed. And as a young person, that was absolutely devastating. I poured my life into stopping that war, and it went ahead. But, a lot of historians and observers say if we hadn't had the biggest day of protest in the history of the world to stop the Iraq War, it could have been worse. It could have gone nuclear. It could have spread to other countries. Bush could have been even more aggressive in foreign policy. And so, this has been what I've dedicated my life to, is doing everything in my power to work for a world of peace and social justice and to save our planet.
So the ballots come out in just 2 weeks from now? They're going to start being mailed to voters, and then they'll be, checking the boxes for one person or another. You're in the final weeks of the campaign then, so what's your pitch? You want to sum it up? What's the main reasons to vote for you? What do you want people to have in the forefront of their mind as they make that decision?
Sure. I think, yes, the ballots have already been mailed to voters who are overseas. So there are already people voting in this election, which is really exciting. And the ballots for us here will be mailed at the end of the month. And we are in the home stretch. And this is the time to make a decision. And the decision is to support a status quo or to cast your vote for change. And the discussions I'm having with voters about what's happening with the coronavirus, this crisis that we're in, that we're not getting out of anytime soon. We need the solutions that the Sanders-Warren wing of the party is putting forward. We need Medicare for all. And this crisis makes that all the more evident, because we understand now on an even more visceral and personal level that we are only as safe as the most vulnerable among us, and that our for-profit healthcare system can't deliver the care that people need when they need it. And we need change. And every other industrialized country in the world has figured this out. They don't have the kinds of costs or casualties that we are having with this virus. And so my pitch is Pete DeFazio has not championed Medicare for all in this moment. And if you're not championing universal health care as a must-have in coronavirus relief right now, you are not a champion for Medicare for all. And that might be because he's taken campaign contributions this cycle in his election against me from the health insurance industry, from a political action committee who is expressly committed and dedicated. Their mission is to stop single payer. Also from a big pharmaceutical company whose purpose is to create profits from prescription drugs that would be threatened by a single payer system. And so, you know, now is the time to kind of throw down the litmus test and really ask ourselves, you know, what do we need from our government? And what can we expect and what do we deserve? And fight for what we deserve. And I will do that.
Okay, then. Thank you very much. Any final 2-second words you'd like to have?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity for the interview very much. And I really encourage everyone to follow us on social media, check out our website, give us a call. We're here. You can't stop by the headquarters anymore, but you can call us anytime and stop by on our social media virtually anytime. We're doing a talk show on a regular basis on Facebook Live. Definitely tune in and send us your questions, send us your comments, what topics you would like to see addressed and discussed. And lawn signs are coming. If you want one, definitely get in touch with us. Let us know. We would love to deliver you a lawn sign if you're in Eugene, potentially by bicycle. And, this campaign has a lot of support, and you should know that our support extends all over the 4th District, and that this election is very competitive, and we're here to win it.
So they just search for Doyle Canning on the web, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, anything else?
Yeah, Canning for Congress.
Canning for Congress.
Canning for Congress on Facebook, canningforcongress.com, Canning for Oregon on Twitter. And thank you so much for your support.
Okay, thanks for your time, and good luck on this.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.